Content reuse, sort of a perennial problem. You think back in history, monks copying manuscripts, movable type, Tumblr, the epitome of content reuse in our day and age.
A Tumblr. I would have said retweeting Twitter.
Sure. Welcome everyone to the Pat and Paul Show. My name is Paul Nicolati. I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Pat McLaughlin.
Hello.
Pat, how are you doing today?
I'm good.
Yeah?
I'm very good, Paul.
How have you been? What have you been up to?
I'm coming off a 13-hour cook on a brisket.
Nice.
Yeah,
turned out?
Moist.
Nice. Now, this was your first use of that smoker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Learned a lot.
Yeah. You going to use that again?
Oh, yeah.
Much like your content, maybe.
Yeah, I would like to have some reuse.
Yeah. And right now, real hot topic in the Adobe AEM space, 6.2, a lot of new content reuse features.
Right.
Days had a number of features in there sort of from the beginning that were inherited from Adobe, MSM, things of that nature, all sort of built for content reuse. But it's a hot topic now. People don't want to have to write the same thing twice.
Yeah, and I think digital content management, it's always been a selling point, no matter how realistic it was. The idea that you can reuse content throughout a site, the second you're building web pages, that's the goal.
Right. So instead of talking about content reuse, what I have today, I've compiled a list of
top three list.
Top three in no particular order, but ordered by egregiousness. Content crimes that impede content reuse. And so this is for you content criminals. Keep your nose clean. Is that what they say? Keep your nose clean?
And your ear to the grindstone, is it?
Your ear to the track? What are you putting your ear on?
The grindstone.
There's like a series of things that you probably don't want your ear on that you're trying to put your ear on.
Right. Nose to the grindstone. That sounds more.
Nose to the grindstone sounds better.
Yeah, that's something.
Still less than ideal.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go through these top three content crimes.
All right. Number three.
We're
starting at the bottom or the top?
We're starting at the bottom. We're gonna stop on a high note or a low note, depending on
really
how you're
low
looking
note
at it. Number one, thoughtless naming. You throw together, and I don't want to be AEM specific on this because this is across the board. If you're working in WordPress, if you're working in Drupal, if you're creating custom widgets in those frameworks as well, it's so easy. It's so easy to just throw names into properties, names into widgets, names into types that work for your immediate purpose, and you sort of understand them, but you're not putting any broader thought into it.
Right. Or just paragraph 1, paragraph 2, paragraph 3. Like, I don't know, is it the name? For me, I don't know if it's the naming the problem or simply that there's no thought to reuse in it.
Right.
That there's no meaning to these pieces of content. You name them paragraph 1, paragraph 2.
Right.
How are you going to reuse that in another app?
Yeah.
So
there's no like, even if there's not universal semantics, it would be nice if there were particular semantics,
even with your own site or your own site or app.
Yeah, because you see that all the time is like content bucket 1, content bucket 2,
right?
Footer column 1, footer column 2.
Yeah, what does that mean?
That's meaningless,
right?
And once you get to the point where you want to pluck out the meaning from a thing of content, it's a problem. It's a real problem.
Well, I don't know what's on the rest of your list, but I have to assume that at some point you're going to get to separating presentation from content.
That's a nice segue, actually.
Right. I don't want to jump too far ahead, but you just set it up by naming stuff column 1, 2, column 1.
Let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and jump ahead.
Right.
Number 2. Presentation is content.
There it is.
On the nose.
There it is. I'm going to guess number 1 too later.
Please. Well, these were largely based on you, so
just to get me fired up.
Yeah. Well, and your crimes against humanity.
Oh,
so
I've been. I'm not only a I'm not only in charge of this, I'm also a client.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's all by experience. I've learned this stuff the hard way.
Right. But the columns are, like you said, it's a perfect example where, like, I need a 3-column layout. I'm going to put stuff into those 3 columns. But, like, the fact that I've broken this page into 3 columns semantically is totally arbitrary. Like, it has nothing to do with the content itself.
Right, exactly. What the content that's dropped in those 3 columns is where the meaning should be.
Right.
Do I have links? Do I have a copyright information? Do I have terms of use?
Right.
You know, if those are just named as columns down there, you can't reuse the terms of use anywhere else.
But even more, like, let's say you've got, you know, a list of a series of images or like text. Like, you just want to split up a block of text into multiple columns or have columns of text and images, or like split things up into tabs, let's say, and you've just named it tab 1, tab 2, tab 3 instead of, you know, system properties and like images and things like that. You know, there's nothing informing you if you're just looking at the content structure as to what's going to be in column 1, what's going to be inside of tab 1. Right,
because in essence, tab 1 and tab 2 are strictly a presentation concern.
Right.
It's not a content concern, and being able to split those out is, I think, one of the most important things, especially when starting with a new site. That's what you have to be wary of all the time, is how do I separate my content for reuse, my presentation out.
Right.
And if you follow that rule, I mean, it's really hard to be strict, like super strict with it, but if you can follow the rule for the most part, you do end up being able to reuse content, because today's day and age, there are just more screens. We have the responsive web, we have apps, we have TVs now, we have,
car dashboards.
Maybe. Let's not go too far.
I'm already on board.
I'm not, Paul.
Refrigerators? Refrigerator doors?
Yes.
Okay.
Mirrors in the bathroom, yes.
Yeah. Yes, smart mirrors.
Yes.
In the bathroom.
Completely on that.
Principally.
But that idea that content can be reused in all those different mediums, but it's going to be presented completely differently.
Yeah.
So you have to separate that out.
Yeah. Like, you almost have to define the content off to the side and then sort of define how it projects into each presentation, right?
Yes.
Like, it seems like it would be very difficult to define the content in the context of one presentation and then parse it out and put it into the context of another presentation.
Yeah, exactly. And that, when you're dealing with, like, say, a content management system, that is always a challenge.
Right.
Because authors now have grown accustomed to the ability to preview that content in all the different presentations, right? So when you author, you're authoring it inline.
Yeah.
But when you get to other mediums, that's not really possible.
Yeah.
So you have to make certain sacrifices for the authoring experience where you are mixing in a little presentation, but still keeping in mind that you want to reuse this content other places. But that's always one of the first things you probably have to do, is determine for an author what is the context they need to author this content accurately and be able to publish it.
Right.
You know, and a lot of times that comes down to which medium is more important, which screen is more important.
Yep. And AEM now 6.2 offers some new, content fragments that I can't stop talking about for some reason. Gives you some of those new affordances to define your content off to the side and then actually use it across multiple contexts. I think they've actually done a really nice job of sort of setting that up. It has some nuances, some sort of glitchy behavior, but overall I think it's a really good step forward. But it's also sort of a paradigm shift, because AEM and CQ did fall into that sort of trap of mixing content and presentation just by nature of the fact that you were defining the content within the context of a presentation.
Yes.
So.
Right, and then the way it's stored. We're storing it in the JCR as that tree.
Right.
So that it's easy to render. Of course, the next time you want to render a different presentation, it's nearly impossible.
Right. And other framework, if you look at Drupal, let's say, and you can, like, any of these you can sort of set up to do any number of things, but a lot of what I've seen in like Drupal or WordPress or stuff like that is you'll have if you're creating a new page or a new piece of content, there's almost like a form that you fill out with all of your content, with all of your properties. And then at some point you pick like, okay, I want to use, like, it's going to fall into this template.
Right.
And then the template sort of defines that projection from content to presentation. And so that's like, it's really that projecting mechanism is sort of the linchpin of being able to separate your content from your presentation.
Right, and that's what you hope your tool gives you.
Right.
That's where these tools shine, right?
Right.
That's the more customization you have to do for the authoring environment, the worse off you're going to be when it comes to your content and reusing it.
Yeah.
You want those tools to do that projection for you, do that rendering, but still in storage, keep it separate. And I agree. Content fragments, I think, are a good step forward, and a serious shift.
Yeah.
But not in the way, like, not out of the ordinary for when the shift went to service-oriented architectures.
It's disruptive,
software.
Pat.
Yes.
They're disrupting. They've disrupted content once again.
Finally, it's been disrupted. One set of services, multiple consumers.
Yeah.
It's very similar, and it's almost in parallel here.
Yeah.
One set of content, multiple consumers.
Yeah. Last one. Number one. You want to hold this up to your forehead or anything?
I don't need to.
No?
I know what it is.
All right.
And if it's not, this conversation's over.
All right. Well, give me
number one, the rich text editor.
Rich text editors.
There it is.
There it is.
There it is. There it is.
So you have some personal experience dealing with this beast in the context of content reuse.
Yes. Let me lay out a scenario for you.
Paint me a word picture.
I'm not even going to go into the technology behind it, but let's just say a content management system was used.
Yeah. Let's call it like mayhem.
Yeah. It rhymes with mayhem. It was purchased.
Yeah.
And it was implemented by running it. That's it. It was turned on. There was no customization, no thought to content. So what ended up being happening, a site needed to go out, and there was one page and one template. And on that page, there was just a rich text editor. And miles of content were just created on each of these pages with just a rich text editor.
Yeah.
So everything on that page, except for the container, was built in the rich text editor and saved as one node in the content tree.
Just as HTML.
Just as HTML with the divs, the paragraphs, no semanticness, no meaning to anything there. I was tasked with redeveloping the site, now with an eye on content and making it reusable, and then having to parse the old content because I didn't want to reauthor.
Right.
So in reality, I had to take strings of HTML and write scripts to parse out what I could. And then an author had to go in, so there was a conversion, and then an author went in after and then tried to copy and paste and move things around.
Yeah, it's the worst.
It was not a great situation, and they spent a lot of money on that content management system, and they didn't get any of the benefits of it.
Right. But it's not, like, the fault is not necessarily the content management system.
No, not at all. What I'm saying is for them, they paid all that money to have one.
Yeah.
And to be able to reuse, and because of the way they implemented the pages, just one page, one paragraph, one rich text editor, they get none of the benefits.
Well, and people were going nuts on that one too, because they exposed the ability to do, the HTML editing as in addition to like just the rich text. So you could just go like there were style
inline
attributes,
styles,
inline styles all over the place that they wanted to keep to the extent possible, but no. And don't get me wrong, there's semantic HTML. You can produce semantic HTML. If you have a list element and a bunch of items in the list, that has a meaning. I can parse that.
That makes sense.
I know what that means.
Yeah, and I'm not even saying even paragraph tags per se are bad.
Yeah.
When they represent a paragraph of content.
Right.
But not using them
as one might expect.
Yeah, not using them as spacing where there's just 6 paragraph text. Yeah. I agree completely. I mean, there's places for divs. the method in which they did it, which was a person who was not a programmer,
right,
and had no idea how to configure,
going in there and doing whatever they possibly could,
right?
To create
They were told to make a site and it has to be out in 2 weeks, and they did.
Yeah,
and
God bless them.
Yeah, it's just when they're responsible for keeping it running, and then they want to do an upgrade, they were screwed. I mean, they had to redo the whole site. What ended up happening? Had to reauthor all the content. There was just no way to
they're
parse.
Probably in a much better spot now.
Now they are, yes. Oh yeah. Now the content has meaning. Everything's structured. They reuse it for a mobile app now.
Yeah.
I mean, they're leveraging a lot of the nice features of a content management system now. So I mean, it's a happy ending, really.
Right.
But it was.
It was a hard road.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a comedy. It was. I would almost say an action thriller.
A comedy in like a Shakespearean sense, perhaps.
There you go.
So, but it's not. So you've got rich text editors. You've also got a lot of people will create mechanisms for authors to just input HTML into content. But really, like you said, the real enemy is people who don't understand like good HTML, good semanticness, being afforded the opportunity to shoot themselves in the foot.
Yes.
It's always been my perspective that if you're in a position where you're having to do that, if you're having to go in and actually hand edit HTML, like something has happened during the requirements for development. Like every time you like edit HTML markup in your content management system, you should go and create an enhancement ticket in the backlog and say, hey, I created this HTML here because I didn't have the means to do A, B, and C. Let's create a more semantic mechanism to be able to define that.
Right.
And that's sort of what I've always advocated on projects that never happens. But
yeah, I mean, especially when a project goes into maintenance. I mean, because one of the whole points of having content management systems is to constantly update content.
Right.
And those content updates can't always wait for a development team to make you a new component.
Right.
And that's what
that's
happens.
what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. You do the update, but in addition to doing the update, just at least put something out there to say like, hey, I did this.
Right.
I know what I did.
Yeah, because if you're thinking about it, that is another piece of development. I mean, that is an enhancement you're adding, whether just because you're adding it yourself using HTML,
right?
It still should be part of the control around a piece of software.
Yeah. We've talked about this before, but the concept of like, what if we threw out the rich text editor and you had a semantic editor where instead of saying, I want this to be bold, I want this to be italic, you define a set of semantics that you can apply to your content where you're saying, I want this paragraph to be important.
Right.
I want this word to be happy. Like whatever semantics you want to come up with to instead of defining the presentation of the content, you're trying to define the meaning of the individual pieces. And then CSS for your site can be applied on top of that to say, okay, happy has this presentation in this context, urgent has this presentation in this context for paragraphs.
I think it's a noble goal.
Laudable? Would you say laudable?
Laudable, yes, I would. I would concur with laudable.
Worthy of laud?
Yes.
Jude Law?
Jude Laud.
Jude Laud.
Love that guy. Love that guy. Was he in, what's the movie set in England over Christmas? Got it. It's not The Holiday.
Home Alone 6?
No, I wish. Please, I have a spec script for Home Alone 6 that you can read if you'd like.
Yeah.
I think there's a need for a semantic editor for sure, but that need can be mitigated with, I think, controls around the development process, as well as understanding content authors understanding what they're building, what they're creating. And there can be a disconnect too between an author and who created the content.
Right.
So maybe an author doesn't know the meaning or doesn't, that needs to all kind of be part of.
Well, there's ultimately this potential disconnect between your content author and your presentation author.
Right, exactly.
So
exactly, and I mean, like I said, it's a noble idea to separate those out.
right.
A lot of places, one person does all of those functions,
Mm-hmm.
or some places they're so disconnected they're not in constant contact. You know, that there is no way to say, here's what the page should look like. Maybe you don't even understand the content.
Yep.
Copying paragraphs here or there, you know, and that's maybe great for efficiency and getting things out, but it certainly will stop you reusing that content.
Yep.
What are your parting thoughts on content reuse? If you could give advice to one person out there who is suffering through or is about to drop a rich text editor into a single page, what would you tell them when they have a deadline approaching? You know, what's a good first step?
First, I would dust off your resume.
That's probably actually their boss should be.
Yeah.
I feel better.
Yeah.
Get that out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, done. Letterman. Top 3. Top 3.